Okay, so in this video, we're actually going to pick up right where we left off. As you remember, we were able to deploy a modern web part to classic pages, and the only way that that web part would work if we were running the local nodeJS server. So if I click refresh here, as you can see, the web part is loaded on this page, but the JavaScript is not executing. Now, if I go to my command line for this particular project and execute a gulp serve, and I'm actually use the no browser switch. So this will prevent my local workbench from launching in the browser tab and just simply start the nodeJS server. Now these JS files should be available, and I hit refresh. Okay, so now in my dev tenant, this is not the workbench, obviously. Now the web part is working. Well, obviously, this is not going to be a real-world scenario. So what we want to do, we want to deploy these JS files to a CDN, so that way when this web part needs to call those JS files, it can call it remotely using the CDN. So let's go ahead and walk through that process using Azure, which is the exact same steps that the Microsoft tutorial outlines. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just go in here and kill my nodeJS server. Now that's stopped. And in another browser, I have here my Azure portal dashboard. And basically, this is where I can come in here and create different services tied to Azure. Another thing that tripped me up a little bit, I navigated to Azure within the admin section of SharePoint. And when I did that, it was trying to launch Azure with my org account. My org account I used to log into my tenant. And I had to kill that session, launch up Azure in a separate browser, and actually log in with my Microsoft account. So just understand that the two accounts are mutually exclusive. You have to use your Microsoft account in order to get into Azure, and then you use your org account in order to get into your O365 tenant. So I just wanted to point that out because I got a little bit tripped up trying to walk through that process. Now, here on my dashboard, I'm going to just click New. And basically, what we want to do, we want to come in here. Azure call them storage, and AWS call them, S3 accounts. I don't know what Google calls them, but basically, all of these are virtual directories or folders in the cloud on these respective platforms, and you can store files there, and you can access them remotely, just calling a simple HTTPS to whatever extension of that file, if it's JS, CSS, HTML, what have you. So that's what we're going to do. We're actually going to create a storage account. So I go ahead and click storage account, and I have to give it a name. This is just going to be a subdomain within the core.windowsnet site. So obviously this has to be pretty unique. So I'm going to just call this SPFx DLC 99. I'm going to call it for this demo here. Now I've been practicing a lot with this, and I created these several times. And it seems as if for our needs, the default values that are set for all those options is great. And all I'm going to do is change the resource group to one of the existing resource groups that I've been playing around with prior to this demo. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit create. Now, once this is created, it's going to run through this deployment process. And this usually takes about 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, it seems like it's pretty quick there. Now I can click on all resources, and that's another thing. It's a bunch of options because in Azure you can pretty much do a lot of cool things. So I have to click on all resources to get a list of all my resources that are available, like my virtual machines, app services, and whatnot. Now I'm going to have to click refresh on the browser to see if I can get this guy to pop up. Okay, it should be loading here in a second. Okay, so this is my guy, SPFx DLC 99. So this is the storage account. And now within the storage account, you can create containers. And I look at these as the virtual directories or the folders within the account. So just scroll down here to blob services, select containers, and then go ahead and create a new container. Now, in the Microsoft tutorial, they're naming this the same name as your web part. I'm going to go off to the edge a little bit, and I'm going to just call this bucket 1. Now, the access type, we have to change that from private to container, and then go ahead and click create. Okay, now our container is successfully created. The other thing that we have to do, and we're going to select this guy. So we're going to come back to this guy because we need to grab some information from it. So the other option here in the storage account is the access keys. Now the access keys is going to be important because this is what our application is needed. Our application in Visual Studio is needed in order for the gulp task to actually push its files to the bucket that or the container that we just created, bucket 1 in our case. So I'm going to click a refresh here. So I'm going to generate a new access key. And this is a warning because if you generate a new access key and you have your application or your project using the old access key, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get access denied. So that's just a warning there. And then I'm going to copy this guy. Right? And now I'm going to go to Notepad, and I have this Notepad outlined with the type of information we need for our configuration files within our project. So this is going to be my access key. And now let's go back to that container, bucket 1. Let's click on the ellipse here and go down to Properties. And what we need to grab here is the URL. So this is going to be the URL to this particular bucket for the storage account that's created, and we need this guy, and this is going to be our CDN path. Now we also need the account and the container information, and that's part of the URL. So the account is just going to be the subdomain here, and then the container is just going to be our bucket 1 name that we specified there. And basically that's it. So creating a storage account is actually not that bad once you kind of bump around and get used to the interface. Actually, do me a favor, leave me a comment. Are you sold on this horizontal menu that Azure used to load the different menu options? I know there's a ton of options, and I think a lot of the different platforms kind of suck at the way they do it, but I'm not sure if I'm sold on the Azure piece. Anyway, let's go to our project. Now, in our project, let me just collapse everything. This is the first level view that we see with all the folders and files within our project. We want to go under the config section, and there's 2 main pieces that we want to take a look at. We have the deploy Azure storage.json, and then we have the write manifest.json. Let's go ahead and update the write manifest with our CDN path, and that's just going to be this URL. Oops. This is just going to be the URL to our bucket. And obviously you want to stay in between the double quotes because they're just going to treat that as configuration setting, string configure. And now you want to go into our deploy Azure storage and then populate these 3 key items here, the account, container, and then access key. So we just grab the account information here. And it's actually pretty cool the way they have this set up because by providing Azure, these Azure information here, you can do a simple gulp task that will push all the JS files for that web part into this container so that when the web part uses that CDN path, all the files, it will prefix the URL to all those files and it will be easily obtained. Okay, so we have the account, container, and access. I'm going to just save this. Now this is good to go. So now what we want to do, now you have to do a gulp ship, right? And what this is going to do, this is going to prep the files and get them ready for CDN deployment, whatever that means. Right? So now that's done. And now you want to do a gulp package solution, package-solution, again with the ship switch. And this is going to prep our SPFx file in order to use the CDN prefix in order to get all those files. And then what we want to do, let's just double check and make sure I'm correct with this, because I've been playing around with this, trying to reverse engineer and try to really understand what these switches do. So that way, as I'm going through my development cycle, I understand, like, based on the type of change, what's needed to, 1, update the CDN versus what's needed to still work with my web part locally, pulling from my local host. So we'll walk through that because I think that step is going to be important. So this is bucket 1. And if you look at bucket 1, it's empty. So now let's go ahead and push the JS file. So this is going to be a gulp deploy Azure storage. Now I didn't do a ship on that one. I don't think that's required. Like, I don't think a ship is needed for the deploy piece. Okay, so that's done. So now if I hit refresh, voila. Now this has popped up. Now this test Deshaun, this is my guy that I was testing with previously. And let me show you where these files are coming from. So if you go into your web part project on your file system, and then you go to this temp directory, and then you go to deploy, these are all the files. I think when you do the gulp ship, they're updated here. So if you're making changes and you know it requires changes to the JS file or whatever the case may be, and you do a gulp ship, these files get updated. Then you do the gulp Azure storage deploy. Then you do the gulp deploy Azure storage. I was mixing those around a little bit, and then it will push whatever's in this temp directory out to your CDN container. Now, to prove that out, and I've been playing around with this test to Sean, actually I'm going to do two things. First, let me delete this. So if I remove it here and I push it out and it already exists, I'm interested to see if it removes it. Two, let me push out another guy. I'm going to just call this Deshaun 123 tests 123, and that's going to be a text file. So now I go in here and do my gulp deploy Azure storage. All right, so this guy is done. So we're going to click a refresh. Okay, two things happen. One, the file that I created, let's go back to my file system here, my local file system. The file that I created, Deshaun123 test 123, that got pushed, but the file I deleted here did not get pushed. So it seems like you have to do a manual delete if you want to remove files from the CDN. But I mean, at least it pushes the files out, so that's good to go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and make sure this guy works as expected. So I'm gonna go back to my O365 tenant. I'm gonna click refresh here. This is still looking for, now here's another good point to realize. This web part is still looking for the files on my local host. It's not until I go to the app catalog, go back to, you remember that SharePoint directory where this SPFx file exists. So drag and drop this guy here, hit replace it. Now, remember that SP file, the SPFx file only gets updated when we do a gulp package solution, which we did before, ship, right? And that's going to tell the SPFx file to use the CDN prefix in order to look for the JS files. Now, if I go back and do a gulp package solution without the ship, that package is an SP file that does not have the CDN, and then it seems like it defaults back to looking for the files on my local host. And I think that's really important because now that we did a ship and now we push everything out to the CDN, as we kind of test, if we make updates, and we do not want to keep going through that CDN Azure deploy Azure storage task, we have to understand that it's looking for those local files, right? So I think that's very interesting to understand where you are when you're making updates and where the files need to be when you're making updates. So okay, so now we here I updated the SP app. I hit refresh, and this guy now is pulling those JS files from the CDN, and we can double check that by going through the network, hit refresh using DevTools, going to the network tab, sort this guy by the domain, and then we should be able to see our, there it is, SPFx DLC 999. So it shows that it's clearly pulling these JS files from the CDN. Now, and obviously I do not have my nodeJS server running locally, so this is indeed ready for prime time, and this is the ideal scenario that you'll be working with once you push this out to production. So let's try this. Just try to make sure, and I went through this a couple of times, and sometimes I got tripped up. Now, I think you need to do, let's do a gulp package solution. No ship, okay? So just gulp package solution. Now this should create everything local, right? It should put the prefix in for local. And then I'm gonna just do a, okay, let's do this first. Now that we did a gulp, let's go ahead and push this SPFx file out, right? Now let's go to my Devo2, hit refresh. Okay, so everything stopped. So this looks good. It's broken, but that's a good thing. So now we're going to hit gulp serve. I'm gonna do the no browser switch. And now this guy should be dependent on, again, my local host running. Okay, so that's running now. Hit refresh and this guy's coming up. Let's double check the network tab. Hit refresh. Sort by domain. And I think all this is going to come under localhost, or is it my machine name? There it is, softnet DLC. Softnet DLC. Okay, so these are the script files that are being pulled. They do not have the fancy GUID that the CDN was using, which is fine. I don't think that's neither here or there, right? So now, as far as our live reload that we're kind of used to as we're making changes, if I go into the web part, source, web part, and then if I come into this guy, let's say description, and I just add a simple 1, 2, 3 here, hit save. Let me kill this. And now I go into refresh. I see that change immediately. Right? So now everything is local. But now if I go to kill my server and then do a gulp package solution ship, right? So this is going to update my SPApp file. Now I go to the app catalog, update this guy. And this is really cool. I mean, it seems like, you update the app, you don't have to add a new instance of the web part or anything like that. And it seems like the changes take effect. So now I'm back out to my CDN, and as you can see, my change is not there, right? Our description 1, 2, 3 is not there. So now in order to update Azure, I have to do a gulp deploy Azure storage. And now I hit refresh and let's see what happens. Nothing. Oh, I think I forgot a step. Let's do a gulp ship. Now once I do this gulp ship, now I should be able to do a deploy Azure storage, and I think that's going to get me the latest files. Gulp deploy Azure storage. Now I'm coming here, hit refresh. Let me do a control F5. No, nothing. I'm not getting the update. Hold up, let me do, maybe I'm doing this out of sequence. Let me do the gulp package solution ship. Oh, you know what? I think the GUID, I bet you those GUIDs are different on those JS files. I bet you the GUIDs are different. Okay, so now I have an updated SP app. Let's try dropping that guy in. I think sequence is going to be everything here. Hit refresh. There it is. Huh. So it seems as if you have to do, if you're making changes and you want to push those changes to the CDN, you have to do a gulp ship, which seems to update the JS files, do a gulp package solution ship, which updates your SP app file, push that out, and then do a gulp deploy Azure storage to push the updated files out. So it seems like that gulp ship needs to be first in order to get the updated changes out to Azure. Interesting. So, and that's the thing. I just really wanted to, obviously, we have to use the CDN of sorts. And, and that's another thing. It's nice that, you have the access token and all this other good stuff so that gulp task for deploy the Azure storage works because it pushes those out for you manually. But there's nothing that forces you down that route, right? If you have a public facing, you have a server that's exposed to the internet and you have HTTPS, you can obviously use that. It's just a matter of taking these files here. If you go to the web part under temp deploy, seems like you want to copy, mine is the Sean123 test file, but it seems like you want to copy all these files out to that server, right? Either it be Amazon or Google or, you know, your own internal server, what have you. Because if you look at these files here, let me bring up the Azure portal. If you look at these files here, and you come over here and you grab the URL to this guy, right? And you just pop this open in the browser. It's not like they have, oh, that's my text file. But, you know, I didn't get a 404, I didn't get a 501 or, you know, access forbidden or anything like that. So it seems like these are just standard files exposed to the internet with SSL. And I think you just need SSL because the tenant is, you know, secured. So any requests that you make, you know, you want to make sure those are secure too. But I think that's it. But it's really nice the fact that, you know, you don't have to do that manual copy and paste to a CDN and what have you. But, you know, just from a development standpoint, playing around, especially if you don't have an MSDN tenant, it'll be interesting to see, you know, the type of calls occur just, you know, by storing these in Azure. But that's it. I mean, I just wanted to point those out. I just want, you know, make sure that, you know, we knew how to get out to the CDN and, you know, how to do the updates once you're out in the CDN, how to revert back to, you know, a local instance so you can still take advantage of the live reload and all this other good stuff. And obviously, our local workbench is not affected by any of this. I mean, I think the local workbench will still work as expected as long as you're running your nodeJS server locally. Okay, so that's it for this video, and it looks like the next step in the tutorial, and I'm back on track finally with following the tutorial. It seems like we're going to do some very interesting things with bringing in jQuery and jQuery plugins with building the accordion web part. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. All right, guys, until the next video.